I'm Kathy Turner, and I'm the chair of the Breeder Education Committee, and this is our fourth breeder series webinar. And so we are happy to be here with Laura Ellis Kling and Pam and Jerry Oxenberg. And I actually don't have any housekeeping announcements, so it is Linda, take it away time.
Hi, everybody. We're so glad to have you with us. And hey, Laura. Hey, Pam and Jerry. Thank you for agreeing to do this for us. It's just so exciting to have you guys give everyone your knowledge and your experience from all of your lives in dog. And I guess I'd like to really start with Jerry and ask you how you got your first show dog.
Well, I started looking in magazines, and I quickly learned that the #1 dog in the country was Gold Rush Charlie. So I figured, being smart, I should get a puppy from him.
Sure.
Well, well, a lot of local people who I was in contact with suggested that he might not be past his hips, and I should not get a puppy from him. So then I went back to my magazine and I looked for who the #2 dog in the country was. At that time, it was a dog called Moreland's Major Sam, who was owned by Bill Prentice, who I contacted, and he suggested that I call Carol Vogel because she'd bred a couple of her bitches to Major Sam. So that's what I did. So I got 2 dogs from Carol Vogel. The first one was a great pet, but she wasn't a show dog. The second one didn't have a great temperament. So I kept looking. And then I noticed that Gloria Kerr was breeding Zap and Genevieve for the 3rd time. And the first 2 litters, there seemed to be, like, everybody in the litter finished in both litters. So I contacted Gloria, and she was doing the breeding for the 3rd time. And she put me on the list. And we talked a few times, so we got a little friendly. And that breeding never took. So I don't remember how long after it was that, but she called me and she said, Jerry, I got a dog back. He was about a year old, and he was sold to an obedience home, and the fellow didn't think he made a good obedience dog. Oh. And Gloria said, I think you would enjoy showing him. And his name was Krishna's Jaw Jim Extra Special.
Oh, wow.
So that's kind of how I started going to dog shows. With Extra, and he was a multiple best in show dog, and he produced Toasty's Royal Mercedes, who was one of the national specialty and was the #1 golden in the country in 1986. So going back a second, Extra was born in 76. So there was a good 10 years before, we did a whole lot of winning. And so for me, that's about how long it took to figure out, what I thought a golden retriever should look like and how we should proceed.
Wow.
Yeah, it didn't happen right away. Whatever success we had in the beginning, I still say it was more luck than smart.
Well,
but
that's
after,
interesting.
But after that point, somewhere in the early 90s, I think, is when we decided exactly what we wanted to do. And I always say, for breeders to be successful, they have to have a vision in their mind of what the golden retriever should look like.
Well, that's great.
Everybody that I speak to who's been successful in Goldens or in dogs in general, they all have that vision. I think Linda and I have similar visions. Other people who are successful might have different visions, but they still have a vision of what they want to do. So anyway, that was my start, and it went from there. The Royal Mercedes bitch produced some nice bitches, and one of them was Toasty Snickers, which we bred to Malagold Storm Warning, and I believe there were 6 champions in that litter. And from there, we were line breeding them and bringing in. Actually, when we got to that point, there's when Linda was bred one of her bitches to Hubble. Can't think of his registered name, but he was an extra son. He was a Kansas son.
Kansas son.
He was
right.
a Kansas son. And at that point, we were doing all these line breedings, and I thought that would be a great opportunity for us to get one generation further back, away from Kansas, and be able to use and the dog turned out to be Rotten. What's his name?
Happy Hour.
Happy Hour.
Toasty.
Yeah.
He had 3 kennel names.
Yeah, there wasn't room for anything else.
So
no, it wasn't.
We purchased him from you, Linda, because we thought that would be a great addition to our breeding program, which it turned out to be. But on top of that, he also turned out to be a great show dog, which was just a plus. That wasn't, so that's not why we purchased him. So and he ended up producing Toasty's Treasure Island, which became the #1 golden in the country, and also the only won the national, and I believe is the only golden in history to be the #1 sporting dog.
I believe that's right.
Yeah.
So which of those dogs, Jerry, would you say was your most consequential dog in your breeding?
I would say Kansas.
Kansas, okay.
Kansas. What was his name?
Champion Toasties, Dust in the Wind.
Dust in the Wind, yeah. Okay, he produced by far the most champions of any of our dogs, and our dogs are not bred a lot. I can blame that on my late friend Connie Gersner, who always said, "My dogs aren't for the public; they're for me. I have them here for me to breed." And I don't, Connie never advertised her stud dogs, and we kind of, we followed that. And he produced, I don't know, so probably around 20 champions, but just bred to our bitches and friends of ours, people who we knew.
Right.
You, for instance, or Terry Coker, John Chase, etc.
Right.
Those are the only people that we let use our dogs, and. I think he was by far the best producer we had. Rotten produced Treasure and other, but Rotten lost his sperm when he was like 6 years old. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't bred quite as much.
Right.
But he was a wonderful dog.
Right. How about you, Laura? Who do you think your most consequential dog was, for whatever reason you think?
Okay, first of all, I did things backwards according to breeders. I had 3 different males that I liked, and I wanted to incorporate them in one pedigree.
Wow. Okay.
And I finally got that done with Killer, who was champion Laurell's Kilimanjaro, who then in turn was champion Laurell Yachts of Luck's mother. We had Scarlett O'Bara out of Yachts of Luck, and they all produced very well. As I look at the picture of her, she was one of the dogs that you could just take a slicker brush to the show with you, and that's all you needed to groom her. But
right.
She gave me what I wanted her to give me.
Well, and as a breeder, that's the thing going forward that you have to have, is a bitch or a dog that give you what you're looking for your ideal.
Correct.
Don't you agree?
Correct.
Okay. And then I know that both of you have had performance dogs. And how do you feel like the performance works into the overall picture of your breeding program? Jerry and Pam, let me ask you first.
Okay, so this dog was on the back cover of the latest UR News, and he is a grand champion with a CDRNJHVC, and he is in training for his senior hunting title, and he is out of a Toasty bitch that the breeder purchased from me. So I feel like it's a very important part of your breeding program. You want to keep the purpose of the breed in your animals, so that if somebody is interested in pursuing that and wants to put the time into it and they're able to do it, they can.
Great.
I have to agree.
Laura?
I would have to agree with Pam on that. All of the dogs that I've had, I've tried to do a little bit of field work with, not necessarily in competition, but just to see how they act with the birds. And the same thing with obedience. I do a little bit obedience, but not necessarily compete in the obedience ring with them, just to make sure that they're trainable and people can have puppies out of them that they can live with and do what they want to do with them.
So you're
Absolutely.
both looking for a biddable temperament.
Absolutely. And there's one thing I want to say. When Laura was talking, she said that in her bitch, she combined 3 of her best stud dogs, and she had a plan. Well, when we got to Kansas, we also had a plan. We imported a bitch in 1986. Her name was Chardine in Love with Toasty from Carol Gilbert out of England. And she in turn produced Lyric, who went on to produce a lot of champions, outstanding dam and an outstanding bitch. And she was birdie as hell. And she could stand there and be over a 4-foot fence in 2 seconds if you didn't watch her. So I used to.
That's where that came from. Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, let's blame it on England. So anyway, she was the forebear. She's in Treasure's pedigree, and she's back there in a lot of our pedigrees. And I'm really grateful that we did that. That was a big major piece of the puzzle. And in turn, they produced Dolly, and Dolly was out of Lyric. And when people saw her win the top 20, they said, boy, aren't they lucky?
Mhm.
There wasn't luck involved. Champion Toasty Salute Dolly was well planned out.
But her mother wasn't a champion, her grandmother wasn't a champion, and her great-grandmother wasn't a champion.
Yeah, but she produced so many. And then she also produced Josie, who was Treasure's mother. So, and Josie was best with winners at the Eastern Regional. And that was the year Dolly was best of breed. And it was so funny because when they were in the ring, I had Josie for winner's bitch, and we were behind. Kelly was showing Dolly, and Dolly spotted Josie and went crazy to greet her. And you think dogs don't love each other or don't know? They definitely know. And I got chewed out royally for the behavior of Dolly toward Josie. And I said, she recognized her half sister. What can I say? She loves her. And it wasn't my fault. It wasn't me. It was Josie. So.
Oh, goodness.
Linda, I have just an observation listening to everybody. When I hope people who are starting programs are listening to the fact that what these breeders are talking about, while they're very proud of the winning their dogs have done, what they're really proud of is the production record of their dogs. So that, you know, those outstanding sire and outstanding dam titles are more important than a lot of the other titles. And
True.
I think we've gotten to a place now where maybe we aren't paying enough attention to what dogs produce. And I'd like to find out, I'd like you to find out how they feel about breeding non-champion dogs.
Indeed. And I was going to ask them, but well, obviously Pam and Jerry brought in a dog from overseas. Did you ever show her, or was ever your intent?
Well, Linda, it wasn't just it wasn't just an accident when we picked. We went to London. We went to the Windsor Dog Show, and we watched golden retrievers for 2 straight days, and we decided which was the breeder that we liked the best. The dogs that we were drawn towards the most. And we looked, and we didn't know her at that time, but we spoke to Carol Gilbert, and we asked her, is it possible that we can come over to our house, next day and go over some of her dogs? So we did our homework. We went there and we went over. There was one bitch that we liked an awful lot, and we were going to get a puppy out of her. And Carol had another litter she was breeding at the same time. She was breeding to Sansu's Golden Ruler, who was a major producer in London, in England. And when the puppy was ready to come, she said, Jerry, the second litter is a better litter. I think you should take a bitch out of there. So that's when we got Lovey, and then we knew how we wanted to breed her when we got her, and we did.
So she was never a champion. She was very English looking, and even her daughter, Lyric, I used to take Lyric to dog shows with me and just bring her along and walk her around. And one day I was walking her, and Arlie Husson was walking by, and he stopped and he stared at us and he looked at her, and then he said to me, don't ever bring that in my ring. And I said, why? And he goes, because she has a wavy coat. And I said, oh, you never read the standard? I mean, really? So.
How about you, Laura? What do you think? Did you breed bitches or males that did not ever get shown?
Oh, yeah. Because I felt that they had a lot to offer the breed, not necessarily for the eye of the judges that were judging at the time that I had them. But when I would breed a bitch, I wasn't just breeding her for that litter. I was breeding her for the next litter, the next litter, the next generation. I wasn't just looking at it as a one-time breeding and then trying to figure out what I was doing. I wanted to try to get this dog to that dog, and then their get to that dog, and to build the pyramid off of that.
So, yeah, you definitely had a plan. And Linda, again, we would breed to a dog that wasn't a champion, but I'd have to see her and look at the pedigree and make sure she was a quality bitch, and that, like Laura said, that she had something to offer the next generation. You don't just go breeding because you want to. That's
the problem with people that are in the breed and are just starting to breed. They don't think that far ahead. They just see the dog is doing the winning today, and that's who they breed to. And and they can produce a good dog or two doing that, but 3 generations later, you're nowhere, because you have so many different pedigrees in your dog, and it's just you can breed a good dog that way, but the consistency isn't line breeding, in my opinion.
Well, what do you think about the fact that so many of our newer breeders are trying to sell most of their puppies as show puppies rather than to pet home? I know that myself as a breeder, I would say 90% of my puppies went to pet homes, and maybe a couple from each litter were reserved for myself, or maybe one other person who was a friend, as a show dog that I felt like they had the potential. Talk about that a little bit, because between the two of you, you've bred over 250 champions. But talk about how you make those decisions for yourself and for people you're selling puppies to.
Well, when I'm evaluating puppies, of course, like Jerry said, we bred for ourselves. I've never bred a litter where I didn't keep a puppy. So that's why we only breed one litter a year or one every 2 years, or occasionally two in the same year. But I'll still keep what I think are the best puppies for myself and grow them out. And if by 10 months a year, they're not fulfilling the potential or the plan, then I'll put them in a good pet home. And I think 97, 98% of our puppies always went to pet homes because I'm of the ilk that show people are mainly collectors. I mean, I hate to say that, but if the puppy doesn't fulfill the show purpose, they're going to dump out on it. And pet homes are the best homes. People love their puppy for their entire lives. And unless a tragedy like a divorce or a death in the family occurs, they are going to be keeping that animal and it's going to be part of their family. You know, I know Laura has said that she has generations that come back to her looking for a puppy. That's how it is with us as well. So I think the majority are pets. And sometimes I have a promising puppy and I put it in a pet home because the family was waiting, the kids want the dog. And I have people over from when they're 2 weeks old and we're socializing the puppies. I'll ask them to bring the puppy back at 10 months to a year so I can look at it. And don't neuter it until a later date. So that way I can get a good handle on what worked in that breeding and what didn't and how the puppies actually turned out. So
How
that's
about
what
you?
I do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Laura?
I can say that primarily I sell the pet homes. And with having had the boarding kennel, I got to see the dogs. They'd come back to grandma's to be boarded. And a lot of pet people had champions that never went to a dog show. They were absolutely gorgeous. They'd walk down the street in Cincinnati and people stop and say, "Oh, that dog is gorgeous. I bet you got that from Laura Kling." And because they had that same look. And I think that the reason I sold so much to the pet home was because I enjoyed the fact that the people enjoyed the dog, no matter how the dog looked.
Right.
If the dog had a foot that turned out the wrong way, that was fine with them. They didn't care. They just wanted a dog that was a good pet that they could love on and would love them back.
And how about Temperament for both of you? I know that for me, Temperament is paramount because people come to all of us for golden retrievers because of their temperaments. And I know that over the years, people have come back to me the same way they've come back to you guys because the temperament is there. It doesn't matter whether I have kids, they have kids, everybody is able to introduce that dog to a family. And how you, Pam, Jerry, that be true?
Yeah, absolutely. Temperament's the most important thing. I think over the years, you know, we've had as many as 8, 9 dogs in the house, and they have to get along. And with grandchildren and people coming in, the dogs, I mean, they just have to love kids and get along. You know, you don't want to put a child in a situation where they would become endangered by another dog going to attack another dog or snapping, God forbid, at a child. That takes its toy away. You don't want that.
Right.
Well, it's beautiful to see a group of 8 or 9 dogs in a field, all running around, all getting along. I can have a stud dog that I've bred and come back 2 hours later, an hour later, and that male can go out with 2, 3, 4 other males. That some of them aren't even mine, that they are people that happen to stop by for, as they called it, playtime.
Sure. Yeah. That's good. Well, and on to that, in dealing with like a stud dog, you mentioned this, Laura, about a stud dog that you've just bred and putting it out with a bunch of different people, different dogs in the field. Talk a little bit about why you do what you do with your stud dogs, whether you've used them on outside bitches, whether you've used them just for yourself, that kind of thing.
I primarily use them for myself. I don't advertise them to be used by other people. If somebody wants to come and breed to them, that's fine. I have no problem with that. And I can tell a short, funny story. Back in the days of Duck Down Unpredictable, we called him Peter. George Rood showed him, and it was Lima Kennel Club. And the sporting group was the last group. These people wanted to breed to him, so we did a breeding. Well, they changed the group order.
Uh-oh.
Here's the dog behind the building, tied to a bitch, not getting groomed. And here goes the sporting group in the ring. Well, needless to say, he was the last dog in the ring. And I will never forget what the judge said to George. He certainly has a smile on his face.
That's a funny story.
That's a great story. It is. And how about you, Pam and Jerry?
Well, I guess we're a little more selective. As we read for ourselves and we had the plan, people wanted to breed to our dogs. I wanted to see the pedigree and see what the bitch looked like. And, you can't line breed on a miracle. So, and they need to have something in common. So if they are an outcross, they need to be of the same type of animal. So you don't get a hodgepodge and get half like this, half like that. And some you can't figure out where they came from. So I think line breed, I prefer line breeding.
Well, and I think that's an interesting point, because a lot of people expect that because you breed this bitch to your stud dog and you get this result, that they're going to come to your stud dog and get that same result.
Right.
Can you talk about that? Laura, you talk about that for a second.
They don't realize that their pedigree is not similar or close to, or their dog is not even the same style of dog when they'll come. There have been multiple bitches that I've said to the people, I don't think that this particular stud dog of mine is the correct stud dog for your bitch. I've had people that have gone ahead and said, well, we want to do the breeding anyway. We want to do the breeding. And I end up going ahead and letting them do it. And when they're done with it and the puppies are 9 months old, a year, they'll say, you were right. We should not have bred her that way. I said, I told you should breed it to such and such dog. That's the way you should go. But people don't want to listen to you.
Yeah. The other thing about that, when people come to you for a stud dog, they, I don't know what plan they have. And I always say, what does your bitch need?
Right.
So if they can't tell me what, because I'm looking to see, does my stud dog offer it? So what do you need for your bitch? What are her weak points? What are you trying to strengthen? What are her good points? What would you like to keep? So it's amazing, but I think a lot of the newcomers, they couldn't answer that really.
Another thing, Linda, that Connie told me years ago is I can breed to any dog and they're going to come out, and the puppies will come out looking like Malinois dogs because of her line breeding for 10 plus years, 10 generations. And I think that was pretty true. And we eventually got to that point too, where we could breed to pretty much anything. And they, well-known, I'm not going to mention any names, but a well-known breeder and an exhibitor years ago. And he bred dogs that were different and showed dogs that were different than ours completely. And he said, I could see a Toasty dog a mile away. And I wasn't sure if that was an insult
or a compliment.
A compliment. So like a year or so later, a friend of his, I asked that, I said, what did Jeff mean by that? I said, I'm going to ask him. And she called me back and she says, that was a compliment, Jerry. He said, Pam and Jerry never went off the track of where they were breeding. They never bred to the dog of the day. They always stayed with what they were doing.
You know,
And that's,
Jerry,
That's-
let me bring up the Toasty dogs again in the pictures, and I'm just going to
Sure.
go through them. And I think I was taken when I looked at this with exactly that. Starting with this dog.
Okay, so that is Tootsie.
Toasty's Royal Mercedes.
Okay, and look at how similar she is to.
Yeah,
Kansas.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then look at the Kansas daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Hello, Dolly.
Yep.
And then you go to.
Rotten.
No.
That's Rotten.
That's right.
Okay, right.
But that was Rotten with Bruce also.
Yeah.
He showed Rotten when he was young. We should have probably waited a year.
Right.
Or two.
Right. Because
And then look at
when
this.
was it he got his best in show, Pam?
Oh, when he was 10. I
10.
showed him and he went best in show. He's awesome.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
look at
This is
Treasure. And
right.
that is you go back to Royal Mercedes, there's not a lot of difference.
except about 20 years.
Right.
And this is moderate.
Yeah.
So as I was working with the slides, I was taken with that. And I can do the same thing with Laura's dog. I mean, there's Kilimanjaro. And look at Applause. The outline
Right.
Beautiful. Yes. Very, very
Is-
consistent.
is the same. And then there was the dog that she acquired because she loved her so much. And there's the outline.
Yep.
So
Similar.
sorry for interrupting,
Yep.
but since I worked on the
Giving me
slides.
goosebumps.
Yeah. No, and
It is when you
I almost threw in a picture of Tigger, but I didn't.
You should have. You should have.
yes.
Yeah.
indeed.
You're allowed.
And if you
That's
if you showed Linda's dogs, you see the same similarity.
Right.
Right. That's well, and it is interesting when you put those things together in a line like that, how you can say, wow, this looks like that looks like this. And I think that's a very interesting segue to, how do you guys measure your success over the years? I mean, we've chosen our successful breeders for these webinars, but how have you measured your success, Pam and Jerry? Champion, outstanding sires, outstanding dams, or
Well,
another?
Okay, so probably the outstanding sire and dams, that's really important. I love looking back and seeing how much each one of these dogs contributed. I just, a month ago, we have another outstanding dam. Her name is Champion Toasty's Missy Franklin. And yeah, thank you. And she just got her third champion male, and she has a obedience titled daughter. So I'm very proud of that. And Reagan really never saw the show ring, but she had one litter, and she's an outstanding dam and one litter. And I'm really proud of that. And the other thing I measure our success by is the respect that other people in our breed give us, the recognition that, the feedback. I appreciate that. And the people over the years have had our dogs that, like Laura said, they come back a generation after generation and they rave about the temperament and how wonderful their dogs are. And myself living with my current dogs that are a result of the 40 years of breeding, and how much I love them and how they are so damn smart. I swear they know English. They're just so smart. The other day I was going to go away, and I have this one rambunctious puppy who wants to chew the baseboard. So when I go out now, I put her in a crate, and I said, I'm going to go out now. She ran into her crate and she laid down, and I said, she's a genius. How does she know what I just said to you, Jerry?
Oh, how about you?
Another thing that I'm very proud of is that the amount of breeding that we've done over the years is really limited compared to a lot of other people. And the amount of major winning that we've done with a limited amount of breeding is something I'm proud of. And just,
Great.
yeah.
Could be. And
Yeah.
how about you, Laura? What do you measure your success? How do you do that?
I measure my success by what the dogs look like, act like, behave like. And if I have a litter that is pretty to the eye, well behaved, get along with other dogs, get along with the people, and that's what I measure my success by. Now, because I didn't sell that many to show homes.
Right.
So, years ago when I was handling, I had quite a bunch of people that would buy show dogs from me. So I did. I produced litters of entire litters of champions, or a bitch that had 3 champions out of each litter. So that's all well and good, as long as you're happy with the way they look, they behave. That's how I judge my success.
Great. Well, I think everybody has their own measure, and that's so important to stand by that and to continue with that as you go forward in a breeding program. And I would like to ask you also, how long before you felt like you began to achieve your success and your vision in the breed? Laura, let me ask you first. How long do you think it took?
I'm going to say it was probably about 6 years.
Okay.
The mold was starting to form. I could see some things that I wanted to change. And I would work towards that. I hear the little one.
It's the border terrier.
So I would say about 6 years.
Okay. Pam and Jerry, how about you guys?
I think Laura was a lot smarter than I was because it took me longer. I don't know. We won a national specialty 10 years after we started. Again, maybe around that time, 10, 12 years. I remember one Eastern Regional we were at in Florida, and there was like 3 specialties and a fraternity and a sweepstakes, and there was like 45 classes for the weekend, and we won 14 or 15 of them that weekend.
Wow.
And I think that's when people outside of our area looked at us and noticed that we were doing something pretty good. And I remember it was an outside show, and after the show, everybody was around the pool area and having a barbecue. And Michael Faulkner was holding court like he does. And there was maybe 10, 12, 15 people around him listening and asking him questions. And I happened to walk by and I heard him say, "Listen, guys, you guys ought to be looking what Pam and Jerry are doing." And that was quite a compliment at that time for us.
For sure.
Yeah.
I think so. Absolutely. Well, in going forward from that, which I think is very important to know how long it takes. I think it's super important that people understand how long it takes to have a breeding program, not just breed dogs. And how do you feel like that you were shaped? When you were shaped, were there people who influenced you or your vision, or when you thought you'd made it, were still influenced by them over the years?
I was influenced quite a bit by Connie Gershner Miller. A lot of her breeding philosophies I respected, and didn't can't say we followed it 100%, but, 80 or 90%, we followed that kind of direction. And I think that's what led to us the success that we did have. I've also spoke to a lot of other people over the years. I spent a lot of time talking to you, Linda. I spent a lot of time talking to Gloria Kerr. Just a lot of people over the years. But those are, I would say, you, Gloria, and Connie are probably the biggest influence of what we do.
Well, I'm glad to know I influenced you. See, you were influencing me.
That's what Connie used to tell me. I used to tell Connie, or my mentor says, "You're too old for me to be your mentor."
How about you, Laura? Who are your mentors?
I can't really say that as such I had mentors. I spent a lot of time back those years a long time ago. You just sit and talk to handlers. They'd point things out. They would say certain things about, look in this breed, look how it's changed. It may not have been Goldens or whatever. And also, you were able to sit down during the group with judges. Now, they're off limits. You can't talk to them. You can't do this.
Right.
You can't do that. And I got so much information from the different judges. And their liking of such and such dog, and that I should maybe think about breeding to that dog. But then I'd say, but if you look at the pedigree, back here, there's this, there's that. And they'd say, you might be right. But you've all got to remember that I had my first litter when I was a senior in high school.
Right.
And ended up having 2 champions out of that litter. Granted, they were the 2 dogs I owned, but, I had 2 champions out of the litter, and puppies at that time were being sold for $75 to $100.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
You rich lady.
Yeah.
And Laura's right. I remember when I was first starting, maybe the first 6, 7, 8 years, I used to always go to the January circuit, because back in those days, all the top dogs, all the top handlers used to come to Florida.
Right.
And I remember spending a lot of time talking to handlers, Bob Stebbins, Bobby Barlow, Kenny Resnick, all those handlers. And I'm not sure how much I learned at the time, but I thought I was getting smarter.
Well, I know.
And what Laura says also about talking to judges. I mean, that's so true. I remember, even not in our breed, but I was ringside with Mr. Tipton one day. And we were watching Skipper Keys, and I asked a question. And he said, "Jerry, let me teach you something about Skipper Keys." You don't get that today.
No. And it's really, this is me just as the moderator saying it's very unfortunate, because I feel like a great deal of my learning happened in motorhomes, sitting, having dinner with my mentor, Connie, and her friends who were handlers or, people that she knew that were authorities in their breed, like George Ward and terriers and things like that, that I didn't know a thing about terriers, but I learned a lot about dogs. And it was probably just absorbed, Jerry, because like you said, I didn't know what I was learning, but I was listening. And today it seems to me like it's so important. That's the reason we're doing these webinars, that people listen to breeders who've been there, who've done that, who've walked the walk for 40 or 50 years and have so much knowledge to give to our breeding population of our younger people who are coming up and trying to make good breeding decisions. So I thank you for bringing up the handler and the judge and standing ringside and not going back to your hotel room to the swimming pool when you can be watching other breeds and maybe learning from somebody who's an authority in that breed. And Laura, you with all your Laura, with all your handling experience, I know that you spoke with lots and lots and lots of people over the years that were able to teach you things that then you brought back to your own breeding program. And in saying that, I'd like to ask you, when you have a value,
at that point.
I'm sorry, when you have a litter, a new litter that you're excited about, you put all your time and information into the litter. How do you go about picking your best puppies?
I do it. I don't really put them on the table that much, a little bit, not much. I basically watch them in the backyard, in the family room. You know, you can feel that a tail might be a little bit high. Well, you're going to know if that tail's high when the dog's moving around the room or around the backyard. So I spend just a lot of time staring and looking. And maybe I might hold two of them up and compare their heads, but that would be about the extent of that sort of thing. And the same thing I tell pet people, I also tell show people. If you're looking at a litter of puppies, don't look for the puppy you want to keep. Eliminate the dog you don't want. Then you have one less in the litter that you're having to look at. And then, you know, you get yourself down to one or two puppies. And that's kind of the way I do it for myself. You know, I'll watch them all running around and I didn't like this one doing that. Or
Pretty much everything Laura said. As far as evaluating, we watch them, put them on the porch, and we just sit there and watch them for hours on end.
Right.
Occasionally we put them on the table, but again, not much. But everything she said is pretty much the way we do it. Exactly.
Great.
Yeah, like, and that starts for us at 7 weeks. So all the puppies are equal. They're all loved the same. They all could be the best one until 7 weeks. Then at 7 weeks, they're out on the back patio. I'm watching them move. Eliminate the ones you're not going to keep. Put them aside and keep looking at the ones that you like. And then you get back to the one. In a funny story, I'll have to tell this because of Kathy, but when we had Beezer, who was out of Kathy's Gainsborough, and he was a group winner, Show Dog Hall of Fame. Beezer was a phenomenal dog. And I did a lot of winning with him. I was like the top owner handler, and I had all those awards from GRCA. But anyway, when he was a baby, I took an empty milk carton and I put stones in it and I banged it on the concrete and I threw it. And the three of the puppies I was looking at, two of them hit the high road and went running away. Beezer trotted out, grabbed it by the handle, lifted it up and trotted around the room with it.
No.
So I guess he said, pick me, I'm the one.
I'm the one. I'm infallible.
Yeah, and he was great. He was a great puppy.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and he was also the first winner of Eukanuba. I went best of breed with him under Donald Sturts the very first year. Yeah.
Great. And okay, Laura, you're back.
yeah, how about that?
How about that? That's great. I'm glad we didn't lose you.
I'm glad the Martians turned you back.
Finish saying what you were saying about choosing the puppies, about watching and how you evaluate.
Just watching them and watching what they do and comparing them to the other puppies. And, you know, there have been times when there really hasn't been a puppy in a litter that I personally wanted to keep. Now, other people thought they were great. They were happy with them, but they weren't exactly what I wanted. Now, I can tell a kind of a funny story like Beezer. When I went to go get Duck Down's Unpredictable, I was still in high school. I was going to do it right. My dad drove. Wasn't going to act like I'm getting a dog, just going to look at these puppies from the Hendersons and Duck Down Kennels and, you know, not act too eager. Well, puppies were all 4 months old. They kept the whole litter.
Oh my goodness.
And I kind of was a project for a lot of the breeders at that time because I was in high school. And there was one puppy that broke through the screen sliding door, jumped in my lap. They said, "You don't want that one. You really want this one over here." They put him back outside. He ran around to the front of the house and he was digging at the door there to get back in. And the true sales pitch of this dog was, I had a Mustang, the window was down, and we couldn't find the puppy anywhere. He jumped in the car.
Oh my God.
And he was laying down in the back.
Oh my word.
And, you know, he chose me. I had to take him. And they came down to an obedience trial about a month later, and they brought the dog that they wanted me to have. And they said, "Now, you really need to look at this dog. We'll take him back. And, you know, I really think you should keep this one." I said, "No, this dog picked me and I love him. I like him." And that's how
The rest is history.
Yeah.
And as I recall, it wasn't a bad choice.
Right.
No. Oh my goodness, that's great. Well, you know, as we move forward through all of the things that you guys have talked about this evening, I would really like for you to talk to all of our audience about mentorship and mentoring people who come to you for puppies, that you actually end up selling maybe a puppy they're going to show and they really do follow through, and what you hope that we can give to our new people as mentors going forward. Pam and Jerry?
Well, it's hard because unfortunately the Golden Retriever breed has gone from an owner-handler dominated ring over the years to a professional handler dominated ring. So when somebody gets a promising puppy and they want to show it, and then they're going in the ring, there's a lot to be learned. Now they have two challenges. They have to learn about their dog and what's its best features and how to display that and you know, enhance their dog. And now they have to learn how to compete with professionals. So it's really hard. And sometimes I see somebody struggling as a handler, but the dog is really a great dog. And the mentor will have to back off and tell them, listen, I think at this point, you're going to need a handler because you're just not getting it. You know, you're just not presenting the dog to its best advantage. So that's a problem. And then, of course, there's the other problem where somebody finishes a champion and they want to breed it. And they're going to just pick the top winning show dog because after all, they're getting the ribbons and they're not picking out what their bitch needs. So a mentor would be really important in that case too, to say, you know, listen, this is where she needs improvement. This is what you want to keep. Let's find a stud dog. And it's really not a good idea to be breeding on pictures. It's better to take an actual look at the dog, travel, visit the owner, look at the dog in the ring, see what they're producing, and have a better idea of your plan. So.
Jerry?
That just brings up, I said, visit. When I, again, in the beginning, whenever I would take a vacation when I was younger, when I was working full time, I would take vacations. I would always take vacations where there was dog shows or, and this goes back 40 years. And I'd visit people. I went to Colorado and I went to the dog show, and that's where I met Gloria Kerr.
And Mrs. Enlund.
And then I made a visit, and probably the younger people don't know, but there was a Mrs. Enlund who was a very successful breeder back in Colorado, who bred very nice dogs. I went to her kennel. I spoke to her. I visited with her. And then I also went to, I met, I can't think of the Dick, I forget his name, but he owned Autumn Lodge's Mr. Zapp, also lived in Colorado. So I went and I visited Mr. Zapp. I remember Mr. Zapp. I don't remember the owner's name. So those are the kind of things I did when I was just starting. And, you know, you have to learn. And, you know, even in the Midwest, I remember visiting Jean Baird, and then she would take me over to Bill Worley's house. So those are the kind of things, I don't see people doing that today.
Do you think that's partly because so many of the dogs that we see at the shows are with handlers, and the handlers, they don't have the knowledge that is backing the dog. They know the owner, but they don't understand the pedigree, that kind of thing, so that the owners are not there to speak with.
Yeah.
Or do you think that it has to do with just the fact that people want a winner?
Handlers, Linda, handlers I've learned over the years, they know what they can win with. I don't necessarily, there are very few handlers around who I would pick a puppy for me, but they do know what they can win with. And that's, the newcomers, what are they going to do? Who are they going to listen to?
Well,
it's hard for a newcomer, it really is, to decide
it is
who to listen to.
There's so much more to know now than when all of us were starting. And Laura, you in particular, because you started in high school, you had so much opportunity to speak with people as a young person growing up. And so many people don't get started in dogs until they're already adults, and they want a golden retriever, but maybe they want to do a little showing. And so how do you feel about the mentorship situation?
I feel that you don't want just one mentor. You need to have people that you can listen to and take bits and pieces from what they have to say and combine it with what somebody else has to say. And you can still have your main mentor, but as far as the people today, so as Jerry and Pam said, it's a handler's game now. And I can remember back when, and I think it's still a little bit true now, where I'd be standing ringside and the assistant would bring up a dog to a handler, and the handler would have to ask what the dog's name was.
Right.
They get into the ring.
And they may not know it
about the dog.
I would like to add a couple things. First of all, I want to say that for many, many years, I was incredibly jealous of Laura Kling because she did start so early, and she had her hands on so many generations of dogs. And I just wish that I had that knowledge, which she shared. But it's different to see the dog in person and touch it. And Jerry, you were saying that you need to see dogs and you can't look at photographs and that sort of thing. Our next webinar is going to be on how breeds change, and I was judging for a few days this last weekend, and I was talking to some photographers. They're shooting dogs entirely different, golden retrievers among them, entirely different now, to make them look like they are not as long as they are and they are not as short as they are. They're getting down and shooting them on an angle, because if you shot them the way that we've been accustomed to, it wouldn't be such.
That's pretty sad.
A lovely
sad and
picture.
depressing.
Well, but it's something to think about for people who look at pictures in magazines and say, "Oh, I really like that dog."
Right.
You don't know what it may not have been Photoshopped exactly, but it's really important to have your hands on a dog.
I don't think we've ever bred to a dog we haven't seen in person.
Right. I have actually. I've bred to a couple Oxenberg dogs I hadn't actually seen.
How did that turn out?
It wasn't too bad,
Turned out okay.
Wasn't too bad.
I would like to thank all of you for your participation in our webinar, and your knowledge and your insight is so important for the breed and for our younger people that are coming up in the breed. Thank you so much for being with us and for sticking it out, I guess, over the years and bringing all that you have brought to the breed. And
Thank you.
I'm going to let Kathy say a few words about our upcoming webinar, that will be our next Breeders Education webinar.
Thanks for having us.
We're going to do something a little different at the fourth Monday in August. Andrew Brace, who's a fairly well-known dog man in England, has written some articles about why, if we take silhouettes of the dogs that we've just seen and we compare them to silhouettes of golden retrievers now, if you eliminate a few kennels, they're very different. So why have these dogs changed? And what causes us to think of the standard differently? And he's also written some articles about moderation, how important moderation is in dogs. So I enjoy talking to him, and so he is going to be paired with Dr. Donald Sturz, who is, I think for all of us, he is a breed specialist. He's a well-regarded judge. He is very articulate. And of course, the two of them are friends. So I think we're going to have some interesting conversations about how does all this happen? What is the breeder's role and what is the judge's role? And I think it's going to be a fascinating conversation. Two smart people from different parts of the world talking about this. And I think a lot of what we're going to talk about is very applicable to all breeds, not just golden retrievers. So.
All right. Can't wait.
Wonderful.
It's going to be great. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Linda.